right, so this is page 10, and we're recording for it to be uploaded later. So we're going to talk about priorities and about your grades. And sometimes people say, I have done everything. Why do I have this grade? So this will hopefully explain that to you. And then your warm up will be based off what we write down on this page, okay? And it's good for you to know. And I'm hoping that you are starting to develop like that critical thinking skill to be able to apply it to other classes. So in this class, you have 3 categories. If you're wondering about your other categories, you can ask your teacher, or when you get to focus, you click on the grade, all your assignments come up. Next to the assignment, it'll tell you the category. So the reason this is important is because some of you may notice that like if you don't do like one thing, like why am I failing if I did 10 other things, but I didn't do this one thing? And so hopefully this will explain that to you. It's because there's different categories and not everything in the grade book counts the same. Okay, so there's literally, I think in here, there's one person who has done everything except for one thing, and they have a 98. There's another person, same class, they've done everything but one thing, but their grade's a 60. So how can that be? So they've done not the same work, but this will hopefully explain it. So the first category that counts the most are the tests. So what I'm trying to show you is that if something counts the most, then that should be your priority. That means like that's what you take care of. That's what like you do first. That's what you spend your time on first. Okay, so for this class, it's your test because it counts for 40% and you don't have that many tests like you will have of everything else. So the tests count the most. So if you don't take the test, you don't pass the test, that's what's going to affect your grade the most. And so that's what you need to take care of first. It needs to be the most important, like on a to-do list. So far, we've had kind of like 3 things. We had test number 1. That was on Friday. You'll have to make it up if you were not here. This is like one of the only 2 things you can't just like make it up on your own and then tell me that you did it on Remind. The current thing that we have going on right now is your participation grade. So a lot of people still are at 115, but not everybody. And then in the future, you're going to have test number 2, possibly on Thursday, possibly, just depending how far we get to today. It may not get there. Some of the grades aren't good enough, then we won't do that on Thursday. So that's coming up. You'll have at least 4 in the test category. That's why it counts the most. So if you're going to be worried, wanting to get something done, make a good grade on something, it needs to be the test first. That's your first priority in this class. And I'll tell you what's second and what's third. I'm not saying don't do everything else. I'm saying this is what needs to drive like your attention. Okay, so when you take the test, we're going to show you, I'll show you examples of what it'll look like today. We'll do practice of that kind of thing today. So so for example, test 2 will be like test number 1. Test 2 will have some of the same exact questions as number 1. So the benefit to that is if you made like a 50 on test 1, but you make a 70 on test 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace your grade of test 1 with test 2 up to an 85. So if you didn't do so well on test 1, then you can replace that grade with test number 2. It just doesn't work backwards. Like it doesn't go from test 2 will be the grade from test 1. It doesn't go that way, but it goes this way up to an 85. So if you make 100 on test 2, then I'll replace it up to an 85. Does that make sense to everybody? As long as you have a grade. If there's no grade there, you haven't taken it, well, I can't replace like a missing grade because I don't have a grade to replace it with. As long as you have a grade here, it's higher. If it's not higher, well, obviously I'm not going to lower it. But if your test 2 is higher, I'll replace it with test 1. Good? Everybody understand that part? Okay, because you'll have some of the same questions on test that you had on test 1 on test 2. It'll be randomized. Everyone will get a different thing. You may get a same question like you did last time. You may not. All right, so those are tests. The second category that is like the most like second priority is the journal. So a lot of you, if you have not set up your journal, that's affecting your grade a lot. You have 3 of those right now. The journal setup where you number all the pages. That's one of the only things that you cannot send me on Remind. You have to show me in person. But everything else, you can just do it on Canvas, bless you, send it to me on Remind. All grades, any questions about grades, they go on Remind. Everything goes like that on Remind. And then pages 1, 3, 4, and 5. And then pages 6 and 7. So that's what's, which one? It says journal 40%, journal setup, pages 1, 3, 4, and 5, 6, and 7. So today you'll send me page 2 in a little bit, but I'll give you time to work on, to send me things on Remind in just a minute. If you haven't finished the journal, I'll give you some time to do that today. Can you turn that off, Brian? We're recording. Okay, the last category, it only counts for 20%, and it's basically everything else. It's the formative category, and it's everything else. A lot of you, what you have missing, and you'll have time to do that today, is the Ed puzzle number 1. So everything else that's not journal pages, that's not tests, the do nows, the warm-ups, the exit tickets, they all go under this category. Okay, so because it counts the least, it's like if you're absent, that kind of thing. Okay, what do you need to do first? Well, first the test. Okay, after the test, the journal. Everything else will just count so little compared to these. You don't want these to be like things that you don't do. You need to do those first. So I'm hoping you get the idea of prioritizing what you need to do first, especially if you're absent.
What's this at the bottom? The second
Ed
one?
puzzle, no, this, everything else, everything else,
Huh?
everything else. So like the do nows, the exit tickets, the test reviews, the warm-ups, everything else goes in under this category. So if you're absent, the first thing you need to do is take care of a test, then the journal, and then do everything else. Does that make sense to everybody? What I mean by prioritize, like what do you need to do first? What needs to stress you out? Like you shouldn't be stressing out over a warm-up if you haven't done the test. Shouldn't be stressing out about a ticket out if you haven't done the journal. Okay? Is that I just want you to understand that and have that and not be worried about something that counts so little compared to things that count a lot. Not just for this class, but your other classes and post-secondary. Okay, so